Hi, everyone. It is Meredith, your evolutionary astrologer, and today we're going to do some true crime astrology. Now, first, I want to say that I know that not everybody who watches my channel from around the world is probably even aware of this heinous crime that has recently really rattled the United States, especially us over here in Washington State and in Idaho and on the West Coast. But I am referring to the quadruple murder that took place in Idaho at the university there. I would like to just make a special tribute to the 4 victims that were murdered in their sleep. It has really ripped our hearts apart, and it has been heartbreaking, yes, devastating, yes, frightening and scary. These 4 radiant, beautiful souls that were fun, and they were in the heyday of their life, and they were remarkable in their own ways. They had extraordinary joy, happiness, glee. They were well liked and popular. They emitted a light about them. I hope that they can feel our love from earth, and I know that their lights still shine so bright from heaven above. To Kaylee, to Xana, to Maddie, and to Ethan, I hope that your souls rest in peace, and I hope that you know that our hearts are with you and your family. And so we're going to talk about the person, the suspect that was arrested. His name is Bryan Kohberger. We are going to look at his chart, and we're going to look at it through the lens of a potential serial killer. It's shocking. His chart is so surprising. I haven't spent any time on it. I literally just put it up and I went, whoa. I think that we can learn a lot by looking at his chart. And I want to preface this and say this, that if you have these similar aspects, if you have his moon, if you have his sun sign, if you have the degree of the planets in the same place, that does not mean you're a serial killer. But he expresses the heinous, the grotesque, the disturbing, completely toxic, corroded, rotten core of these planets and signs and the whole interaction of his chart. This is a corroded soul, and I think they will find him guilty. His DNA matched, so they found his DNA and it matched with the blood at the crime scene. The sheriffs in Idaho, wow, they are very interesting people, but they genuinely believe wholeheartedly that they found their killer. I'm going to share with you his chart. I want to give you just a little bit of background, okay? These 4 beautiful, radiant souls, as I mentioned, were murdered in their sleep. They were literally butchered. And this happened on November 13th, 2022. And then they found their suspect and arrested him on December 30th. 2022. So this whole entire town, which is a pretty small town, was living just in complete fear around who killed these popular, fun, adorable, beautiful 4 people in their sleep. And why would somebody do such a thing? They really didn't have enemies. They were very well liked. The suspect, Bryan Kohberger, went to school at Washington State University. The murders took place at the University of Idaho. Idaho is just right next door to Washington State, so it's not very far at all. It's actually really close. And they're kind of like sister cities, and they oftentimes go back and forth to different parties. This murder really sank deep into my heart. So many people that I know go to Washington State University. My mom was a professor there. Most or a lot of my friends' children chose that university to go to. My nephew just got a scholarship to attend that school, and that school is one of my daughter's schools that she's considering going to. That school is about 4.5 hours away from where I live. It's on the other side of the state, but it is a prominent figure in our state. This man, Bryan Kohberger, was studying criminology and forensics at the school and getting his PhD at Washington State University when he committed the murders. He even went back to his classes after he committed the murders. His whole criminology class talked about the murders. He's so strange. His classmates said that his disposition completely changed after the murders happened and while they were talking about the murders in class. However, nobody suspected him. I'm going to show you his chart, and you are probably, if you know even a little bit about astrology, you're going to fall out of your chair. I know I did. I was just aghast. I do want to say he's a little bit older than them. He was born in 1994, and all of these beautiful victims were born in 2001 and 2002. I do find it interesting that Kaylee was a Gemini, and Maddie was a Gemini, and Xana was a Cancer, and Ethan, who was Xana's boyfriend, was born in October. I don't know if he's a Libra or Scorpio. I'm going to guess Libra just based on the videos that I've seen of him. But I do know that Ethan was a triplet, and so he's left his twins behind. I thought that was extra sad. Okay, so let me show you the chart. We'll look at it together. November 21st, 1994. I will tell you, though, that we don't have his birth time, so we cannot know his rising sign, and we cannot know the houses that the planets sit in. Now, when you don't know somebody's birth time, it's really important to know if you are on a day in which the sun is going to change signs or the moon. Holy moly guacamole. Look at the stellium in Scorpio. What is a stellium? A stellium is more than 3 planets in one sign where the planets are within 10 degrees apart. So we have 2 and 13. So there's the Venus. That's 11 degrees, almost 12. So I would not say that his Venus is conjunct his north node, but his north node is conjunct 3 degrees away from Mercury. Mercury is 10 degrees away from Jupiter. That's very telling. Jupiter is in a tight 2-degree conjunction to Pluto, and Pluto is basically sitting on top of his sun. We have a stellium from the north node all the way to the sun. We don't include Venus because it is too far away. It's a little bit of an outcast, which is the theme to my entire reading of his chart. As you guys know, I talk a lot on my channel about the perilous anaretic degree. This young man was born into crisis with a 29-degree Scorpio. You know, if Scorpio isn't intense enough, let's give him a 29-degree sun, right? I did check, and the sun will not move into Sagittarius on this day. I do want to also tell you, sometimes the sun does move into Sagittarius on the 21st of November. You have to check your days. If you're born on the very last degrees of your sign, really check and see. There is no such thing as a cusp. If this is Scorpio, you are either Scorpio or you're Sagittarius. You're not both. If this doesn't look like a Scorpio face, then I don't know what one looks like. And as a matter of fact, I think he looks like he has Scorpio rising too. He is so Scorpio. I mean, his eyes, his dead eyes, right? They're just sort of hollowed out sockets that just stare at you. And he, I think, is the expression of the dark and the demonic side or expression of his planets in their signs. I want to also tell you that trines are not always a good thing, right? Look at this. He has a pretty big trine, and it is a trine from Venus to the moon to Saturn. 2 degrees, 7 degrees, and 5 degrees. That is a very tight grand trine. You can see that his chart is 70% water. Whoa. So this guy is so emotional, and he doesn't look like it, and he probably doesn't reveal it. I'm also going to tell you, when you have this much emotion, when 70% of your chart is emotional, that is probably very difficult to deal with. That is probably somebody who lives with great pain. Now, because he has so much Scorpio, it's a silent pain. There's a silent ache. When you have that much water, I will tell you, you have a disposition to quite possibly abuse drugs or alcohol to escape the pain or to numb the pain. This is a person who has really big feelings. This is why I wanted to show you guys this chart. I just think this chart is very, wow. If you're born in November 1994 and you have a Scorpio stellium, it does not mean you're going to be a serial killer. I promise you that. But what this is showing you is is the dark side or the dark expression, the sickening, the sociopathic, psychopathic expression of these planetary configurations. Now, I want to tell you the 29th degree, you can do something great with it. You can do something absolutely amazing with your 29 degree. You just have to channel. You just have to dig for it. You will be handed a challenge, and it is your prerogative what you do with that challenge, right? You can use that challenge to make you rise up and conquer the hard stuff in your life, or you can use it in a demonic way that will completely sabotage your own life, sabotage your own happiness, ruin your life, and ruin other people, to say it politely. Bryan was getting his PhD in criminology. He was OCD and he was obsessive, almost paranoid, obsessive about not eating meat, about being a vegan. We learned that in the news. He wouldn't even allow his parents to use the same frying pan if meat had been cooked in it. And believe me, I get my vegans. I was a vegan for almost 2 years, and I get it. He also went on starvation fasts. Sometimes he would not even eat for a full day or longer. And so he had a tremendous will about him, right? And he had a definitive belief system. Now, we also know that forensics and criminology, and I think he had his undergrad in psychology, we know that that is just a stereotypical, over the top, absolutely cliche. It is Astrology 101, Scorpio. Right? So that really fits. Also with Cancer, Cancer loves understanding people. I want to also say that this man was considered highly intelligent, and I'm not surprised because he has Jupiter conjunct Mercury. However, he sort of missed the details. So for his OCD that he is, and for as detailed as the Scorpio in him was, I think his obsessions got the best of him. It left him very sloppy in the end. How was he caught? Well, and I'm going to show you his progress chart, but I'm also going to show you the night that he orchestrated the killings and murdered these 4 innocent people in their sleep. You'll be quite shocked at what is going on in that chart. And then I'm also going to show you the time of his arrest. It's really fascinating to look at. I hope you learn a lot. With Mercury conjunct Jupiter, it can leave you with this ability to see the big picture, right? And to have an obsession around a belief system, because now your mind is sort of exaggerated. Wherever you have Jupiter in the chart is where you will be exaggerated. You'll be a little too much. You'll be a little bit more than people want to deal with. You'll be a little excess or extra. It's where you're on steroids. Just think of being all jacked up on testosterone around his Jupiter, because it's in Scorpio, and Scorpio is ruled by Pluto and Mars. And also look at what Jupiter does to Pluto. It makes this guy obsessive. And if you guys haven't watched my Pluto series, please go watch my whole Pluto series so you can really understand the level of obsession that was churning and burning and toiling inside of him. How he got caught, and this is the unsung hero in the story. After he murdered these 4 people, he got into his white Hyundai Elantra and he drove through these farm towns. This is all like literally, there's probably not even any street lights out there. I mean, it is pretty rural, these small towns. And so he drove through 2 small towns. One small town literally is a population of 600 people. The next small town is a population of 400 people. Well, it was so odd for a white car to be speeding through the town on the major street that the worker at the A&W gas station thought it was so weird to see this car come barreling down the street at 3 o'clock in the morning out there in rural nowhere, not far, 15 minutes away from the house that he conducted the murders at. They all lived in the same house. This was a party house. There were thousands of people that partied at this house for years, year over year over year over year. And it was kind of a come and go, sort of a frat house, but it wasn't a frat house. It was on Fraternity Row. The Sigma Chi fraternity was across the street, and they were all Pi Phis, I believe. And those are 2 sorority. That's a sorority and a fraternity. And people just came and went. And this was a happy house. This was a house of good times. That's where the murders took place. And then he escaped. He got out of the house, got into his Hyundai Elantra, went through the town of 400 people. And the cashier person actually got out their cell phone and thought it was so weird, videotaped the Hyundai Elantra that was white. They really were suspect of that car. And that car is what actually led them to Bryan. He drove that car all the way across the entire country, Idaho, all the way to Pennsylvania, which is over there by New York, Washington, D.C. I mean, holy moly, what the hell? It was the awareness of that worker at that gas station that really tied this case together. So the community really worked hard at putting this together. A lot of the community got this wrong, and that's one of the sad pieces of this story, but they found him. It took 45 days for them to collect enough evidence to create an arrest, but they had him as a suspect within just days, I think 4 days, and they started tracking him. And the only silver lining I see in all the TikTok detectives that were wrong about this case, it gave Bryan a false sense of security and happiness. So he went back, I believe, to Washington State University and went back to his classes, and then he drove across the country for Christmas break to go back to Pennsylvania where his family lives. And ultimately, that's where he was arrested at his parents' home at 3 o'clock in the morning on December 30th. Let's keep looking at his chart. With Pluto on the sun, I want you guys to watch my Pluto series where I talk about Pluto conjunct the sun. Pluto-sun aspects. That is huge. You know, Pluto conjunct the sun is a person who has or feels like they have a supreme power, a supreme destiny. They also have dominance issues. They can feel their whole lives long that they're not powerful enough. And I feel like with Bryan, he felt like he couldn't tap into this raging power that was inside of him. I feel like he wanted the endorphins that power would give him. Here he was so obsessed with forensic psychology and criminology that he put on the internet a survey to ask people to take part in if they have committed a crime. How did they set the crime up? How did they clean the crime up? How did they feel about the crime? How did they process the crime? How did they execute the crime? What were their emotions during the crime, before and after? And this survey was really, really sickening. I think it was a cover, him wanting to try on the concept of being a serial killer or being a criminal. I personally don't think that he intended to kill all 4 people. I have 2 theories about him. I think this guy has a massive drug problem, probably. I do. I think that he had enormous emotions, jealousy, rage, and I feel like he probably was jacked up on something while he committed these murders. I also feel like he got a sick stimulation from killing one. I think he meant to kill one of the girls. I think he and one of the girls had a connection. I also think that he, with Pluto on his sun and Pluto Jupiter, and Mars as the co-ruler of his sun, I think that he had a quiet narcissism inside of him. He probably felt outcasted, alone, alienated, and that is the Saturn-Venus in water with the moon there too. I think he felt not loved, not lovable, cast out, alone, alienated, and I think that he did not know how to socialize. I have a feeling all that Scorpio, he was probably extraordinarily awkward, maybe even a little weird, introverted, probably painfully introverted. And I think he meant to kill one of the girls, not Xana, but one of the girls. The others saw him, or he couldn't take a chance because they were sleeping in the same bedroom that night. So had they not slept in the same bedroom, maybe it would have turned out differently. I don't know. I don't know enough information about that, but I do wonder. That's one of my questions. And I think we will find out why he killed Xana and Ethan. Maybe he was afraid that they heard the screams. One of the girls screamed. So the other reason why the Hyundai Elantra is so important is the neighbors heard just a god-awful scream at 3:30 in the morning, but because this was such a party house, they didn't take it seriously because they oftentimes heard loud noises and screaming and, hooting and hollering. And so they just didn't take it seriously until hindsight. And then they realized, oh my God, I heard the scream at 3:30 in the morning. We believe that that's the time of the killing. And I'll show you that chart too. But with Leo, Mars in Leo, there's a regalness inside of him. Now it's suppressed. It is square, almost exact to his Jupiter-Pluto sun. So it doesn't operate properly. It's enraged. So this is a man who has such deep internal rage. Rage for what? Rage for being invisible, being alienated, not being seen, not being loved properly, and probably didn't know how to handle it. I think this was ultimately a crime of passion. Now, how does somebody who goes to Wazoo, that's Washington State University, get involved with these kids that are younger than him, 94 to, 6 years younger than him, 2001? Was he stalking? Could have been. Did he hang out in Moscow at that university? Maybe they had a social media connection. I mean, this chart is really disturbing. It's disturbing in so many ways. Also, he's about to have his Saturn return. Okay, this just breaks my heart. Bryan on the inner wheel and the Idaho murders happening November 13th, 2022, just before American Thanksgiving. It was just absolutely devastating when we all woke up to this news at 3:30 a.m. in Moscow, Idaho. The south node was almost exact on the north node. Do you guys see that? This is kind of shell-shocking, and this is sort of where I think his life got twisted, turned inside out. The south node on his north node, obviously he could have made decent choices, but he didn't. With Uranus over here, opposing his Mercury, the guy literally snapped. I think he also wanted the shock, wanted the exhilaration, wanted the mental stimulation, was looking for it because Uranus right here is exact opposition to his mind. The man lost his mind, went into probably just a fervor, just a terror. With the south node wide but still conjunct Venus, that's love gone wrong. That's feeling shut out by love. Think of the south node as your baggage, right, of the sewage that you're supposed to sort through, and it's on his Venus. It's where he felt slighted, he felt wrong, and he's so narcissistic with the Mars in Leo shadow energy that he was going to do something about it. This south node at 12 degrees Scorpio by transit in a wide conjunction to his Venus is retrograde. So he already feels probably not attractive, not good enough, not worthy. He probably really has an outcast mentality, a freak of sorts, filled with disdain and deep self-loathing, to tell you the truth, and then projected onto people who were popular, people who were radiant, beautiful, lovely, outgoing, well-spoken, articulate souls that he may have felt rejected by those types of people, or he may have felt rejected specifically by those types of people. We don't know if they knew each other. It might have just been that they were the archetype of the kinds of people that rejected him. They were so highly social that they socialized with great ease. They communicated openly, freely, and expressively. And I think a couple of them were even like marketing, sales majors, marketing, communications, right? In that field, very bubbly and effervescent, funny and fun. They were partiers. They were in the heyday of their college life, and that is college life. I want to show you one other thing about his chart, and that is, look at where Pluto is. It's triggering Uranus, but his Uranus is in a perilous position because it's in a quincunx, which means it goes odd. It's a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, if you will. And it's exact 23 degrees. Leo is in an exact quincunx to Uranus, and Pluto, the planet of death, the planet of murders, the planet of killing, the planet of annihilation, is sitting here on his combustible, pissed off and angry Uranus. Why is his Uranus angry? Because it's in an exact quincunx to Mars, and we know that he was expressing the shadow side of this. Now, this could be a creative genius. So if you have this aspect, Mars quincunx Uranus, you could be just this absolutely flamboyant, wild, amazing, creative genius. But he didn't choose to do that with his. And when Pluto came and sat on it, it was like he was going to take his power back, and he got to be powerful for about 45 days. Yeah, he got to sit in that power. I also think that he justified these crimes. I really have a feeling that he doesn't have a whole lot of remorse, and I don't know why. But Pluto, right here, Pluto transiting is exactly sextile his Jupiter in Scorpio. He felt he had a right. That is very like taking back my power, acting out his belief system in a way that would put him on the map. I also think that he might have even been a part of the social media piece. We'll probably find out later. He might have been feeding clues to TikTok or the sheriffs, or he might have just been watching the powerful thing he did on the news and kind of getting off on it, liking it. I say that because of the position of Jupiter, and I say that because of his Mars. I think this guy had a silent agony around, for whatever reason, feeling like a lone wolf. I'm really sad that that was a Cancer moon that night, and especially with Xana being a Cancer. So the moon was on her sun, most likely, and Pluto was opposing her sun. So it was a emotional night for them, obviously. He was really emotional that night too. So I wonder what triggered him to do it on this night. When you have Uranus, though, opposing Mercury exact, I'm sure he had this planned and thought out, but I have a feeling he kind of just got a wild hair and was like, okay, tonight's the night. Uranus makes you neurotic. It makes you a little bit crazy. It makes you have really tightly wound energy. It has you sort of buzzing. It has you kind of high. I would not be surprised if he was literally jacked up on some crazy ass drug to give him the adrenaline rush, or, had one too many Red Bulls or whatever. You're going to have a hard time really staying in that methodical Scorpio energy when you have Uranus literally opposing you. This is really going to probably go to trial, and even we're going to find out more and more stuff. Even by the time this video is out there, we'll even have more information than what I already know. I do find it very interesting that he will be going through his full-blown Saturn return when this goes to trial. So I do want to say that Idaho does carry the death penalty, and but you have to qualify for it. Every state is different. Some states have the death penalty, some abolished it, and some don't. So Washington State, where I live, and by the way, where Bryan was living, does not have the death penalty, but this will be punishable in Idaho where the crimes were committed. He has no prior offenses. The only prior offense he has is he got pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt while driving. But I think one of the ways that you can qualify for the death sentence is if while you were committing a murder, you committed another crime or another murder. So the fact that it's 4, I think that they could possibly ask for the death penalty. We'll have to see if that law has since changed, because a lot of states in the United States have recently changed their stance on the death penalty. For sure, he'll be up for life in prison. I think he pretty much destroyed his life. He did commit these crimes when Saturn was squaring his whole stellium in Scorpio. This tells me that the motive was around feeling powerlessness, trying to find an outlet for his anger around having felt that he was shunned, that he was not included. Maybe he was jealous of the radiance and beauty of these people. I do feel like he murdered these people to find his own freedom, where ironically, all he did was sabotage that very thing, because he will now never be free. Now, you have to know, I don't know his birth time or his birthplace. I'm assuming it's Pennsylvania, though. I do think, though, they will get him to talk. I do think that they will get answers from him. And I hope when Saturn returns, I hope that it creates enough compassion in him that he does speak about what he did and why he did it. And I hope that he can lend some comfort to those poor families. I'm wondering if he hated women, or if he just felt so jilted by beautiful women in his life that he decided to punish these beautiful women and man, for getting to be with those beautiful women, for all of the rejection that he probably felt. I think he is a psychopathic, antisocial, oddball creature that had a tinge of narcissism and, of course, enormous obsession, and misabused his power. And I think the charts are really kind of scary. His chart and the transits are just overwhelming. I'm so happy that he was careless enough that he made some mistakes that led to his captivity. Anyways, I hope you guys learned something from this video. I know this was a little bit of a sad topic, but I wanted you guys to see. And don't forget to get your own reports and your own chart in my store. You can find the link to that too in the notes below. And I wish you the very, very best from my house here in Seattle to wherever you're at in the world. Take good care. Bye for now.